Haruki pokes the fire, making sure it stays alight as the rain outside tries to make its way into their refuge for the night. They'd done pretty well for themselves today. Even though it leaks in a couple of places, the farmhouse they're currently staying in is well stocked and has a fireplace which they'd immediately put to use, glad to be able to dry off and finally have a warm meal. They'd even managed to shower, the water system miraculously still functional. He sighs and leans back against the couch he's sat against, turning his head so that he can look over at his companion. The blonde is asleep, blue eyes hidden behind golden lashes and face bathed in the soft firelight, his features completely relaxed for the first time in what feels like forever. Haruki can't help himself as he brings a hand up to stroke the scratch on the side of his face, tracing it back to his cheek and letting his hand settle there, unable to find it in himself to feel guilty when the other stirs. Not when he's looking at him like that, sleepy and malleable, lips pulled upwards in a gentle smile, making him look young and innocent. Not for the first time, Haruki finds himself reveling in how strong a person Konoha Akinori is, as he seems to always find it in himself to smile, even as the world crashes and burns around them both, encouraging Haruki to keep going and not give up, if only to protect that smile, as fragile as it may be sometimes. He feels infinitely grateful that the other has survived long enough for Haruki to meet him and get to travel alongside him. He remembers the cold feeling of dread as he'd woken up, finds obscuring part of his view, only to find that every one of the survival pods other than his had ceased working. He's brought back from the traumatizing memory of finding what was left of his friends and family by a warm hand against the back of his own, still on Konoha's cheek. He focuses his attention back on his friend and smiles at him lazily, Konoha's hand leaving its place on the back of Haruki's to find gentle purchase against his cheek instead. Thunder finally breaks through the pitter-patter of rain outside, breaking the quiet as the house trembles around them slightly. "Hey," Konoha's voice is raspy from sleep. Haruki retrieves his hand as blue orbs disappear once more, the blonde closing his eyes again, retracting his own hand so that he can stretch leisurely. "How long was he out?" he murmurs. Haruki checks his watch, still forever grateful that it doesn't require a battery, as it's the only thing that helps them keep track of time in moments like these, where day bleeds into night and then back into day. "About 4 hours, he answers, feeling pleased, even more so when Konoha's smile widens a little, though his expression remains dazed. "I can't remember the last time I've slept that much. I'm all groggy now." There's a bright flash of white light outside, temporarily making its way through the gaps in the barricades they set up against the windows as lightning strikes somewhere in the distance, the sound of rain becoming heavier and more aggressive as the weather worsens. Haruki chuckles and leans forward, placing a gentle kiss to Konoha's temple. "You're all soft," he corrects in a whisper, earning himself a breath of amused laughter from the blonde. Haruki pulls away as his friend starts to rise, sitting up before sliding down onto the floor next to him. He smiles bemusedly at him. "You know, I could have joined you up there instead. You didn't have to come all the way down here with me." Konoha ignores him in favor of cuddling up to his side as close as possible, the height difference small enough now that he can comfortably let his forehead fall to rest in Haruki's fluffy brown hair. The brunette indulges him and wraps an arm around him, grip loose and gentle as he holds him close. He's always found it a little ironic that just because Konoha is almost a head taller than him, people always automatically assume that the blonde is the threat, though it has saved them on one occasion, where a group of scared humans had been too focused on trying to neutralize his friend when it's actually Haruki who has the muscle mass and, coincidentally, the 12 years of experience in boxing. He may or may not have accidentally broken the arm of the last person who had roughed his companion up. Twice. Thunder roars once more as it shakes the house. The rain is falling heavily enough now that the water droplets are periodically making their way down the chimney and into the fire pit, emitting little sizzling noises as they turn to vapor. There's a growing puddle by the doorway, and he's already prepared to find a miniature lake in the kitchen when they decide to move later. Haruki nuzzles into Konoha's neck, the smell of his recently cleaned skin contrasting strongly with that of rainwater and sweat-drenched clothes. It's not like he cares much. It's not like either of them had been allowed the luxury of being picky ever since they woke up. Besides, anything is better than the smell of blood. "You should sleep," the blonde whispers in his ear. "You didn't sleep at all while I was out, did you?" Of course he didn't. Why would he risk sleeping while Konoha was out himself? Just because they weren't outside didn't mean they were safe from harm. He already slept fitfully when his friend was the one staying awake, the memory of being jolted awake by Konoha's distressed cries as daydreams tried to snatch him away still much too vivid in his mind. No, he'll sleep when they finally reach Alimor. Only then does he think he'll be able to relax enough to get him more than 30-minute power naps. It had been hard enough when they'd lost Onaga, whom Haruki had only known for the short week they'd spent together, hardly getting to know each other due to the man's taciturn nature. But losing Konoha, after all these months spent together, sharing everything, be it from their past down to body heat when they'd last got caught up in the rain, he'd be as good as dead himself. The thought makes him tighten the grip he has on the blonde's shoulders, his other arm coming up to grip him around the back, turning so he can cradle him in his arms. He brusquely nuzzles further into Konoha's neck as the other makes an adorable sound of surprise in the back of his throat, his own arms coming to wrap around the brunette. "Komi?" is whispered uncertainly against his temple. Haruki clutches Konoha tighter and squeezes his eyes shut as his throat closes up. He chokes on his words and lets slip a broken, "I love you." Thunder crashes again, louder now, closer. Konoha tenses up in his arms, and Haruki can't quite blame him. They'd never mentioned anything about love, let alone feelings. Hell, they hadn't even talked about this overly tactile thing they'd had going on for so long Haruki can't actually remember a time it hadn't been a part of their interactions. He prepares himself for gentle rejection, feeling a little silly for letting his emotions run away with him when he's usually so put together. But then Konoha's grip tightens around him, and the mouth resting close to Haruki's ear opens, letting a wavering voice wash over him in the gentlest of whispers. "I love you too." Lightning scatters points of light throughout the room, and he feels like he's been punched in the gut as his breath leaves him all at once. His head is spinning as he jerks away from Konoha, almost frantic in his need to see his face. The blonde pulls away, expression concerned, and Haruki barely has the time to see his pretty blue eyes before he closes his own and kisses him. Thunder booms. The house trembles. Lightning strikes. The rain roars. It's clumsy, and he accidentally bumps his nose against the others in his rush, but he can't bring himself to care about the sting right now, and it appears that the blonde can't either, as he simply tilts his head enough to adjust the angle, letting their lips mold together more comfortably as he presses back into Haruki, almost desperate. The thunderstorm outside rages on, the cold humidity of it kept at bay by the fire that crackles and hisses, basking them in its warm orange glow, as the kiss slows but doesn't stop. L'amour is days away, but Haruki would walk until the end of time itself if it meant staying with the man in his arms.